The next day, Aizawa let the class know that Izuku and Shoka would be in the finals. He explained the situation and asked that the class please understand. The reaction was mixed. Many of the members understood why the pair were being elevated. They knew how powerful they were. Several were grateful they did have to face them. However, some were eaten up with envy. A certain grapehead got very jealous and sat sulking in the corner for most of the day. At the same time, Bakugo was still fuming. Steam was literally coming off the bomb boy's head. The next few weeks flew by. A students trained harder than they ever had before. Izuku focused on trying to master his power output. He did get better, though he was nowhere near being able to go critical at the drop of a hat. The blue teen also helped out his classmates with their training. He would make suggestions based on observations he had made of them. They were all grateful for his input. They all knew they would need to be at their best for the fights ahead. As the sports festival neared, everyone grew more nervous. This was the main topic of conversation during one lunch period. Izuku, Shoka, Eri, Melissa, Kirishima, and Bakugo were all seated together. The group were all staring at Izuku. The fire teen had a strange look on his face. None of them could make out what it meant. Melissa leaned over to Shoka, seated across from her. What does that face mean? Shoka took a slurp of her dish of soba noodles before she spoke. I have no idea. This surprised both Melissa and Eri. The twin-horn girl responded in a confused tone. But he's your boyfriend. Surely you know what his facial expressions mean. I do, but Aizu is an interesting guy. He often comes out with new and surprising things to keep me on my toes. Bakugo got annoyed at this conversation. He decided to solve the problem. He raised his powerful hand and delivered a powerful slap to the back of Izuku's head. A huge red spot appeared on the back of the boy's head. Izuku grabbed the back of his head from the pain. Ow! What was that for, Kakin? Your stupid face is ruining our lunch. Firefly, why are you so out of sorts? Shoka shook her head at this display. She was about to ask the same thing. He didn't have to hit Aizu. She could have gotten the same info out of him more gently. Honestly, she did not know what Aizu saw in this guy. Izuku got done rubbing his head. He spoke with a worried tone. It's the OP students. Shoka figured it might be that. You said you were going to do some research on them the other week. What did you find out? I watched their grade level tournaments the other night. Turns out Mr. Aizawa was right to be worried. Those guys have some crazy powers. This got Kirishima interested. How so, Midorobro? I focus on the freshman tournament. There was one guy who could make weapons out of darkness. Then there was a girl who could summon snowmen to fight for her. Really? The sharp-toothed boy looked shocked and amazed at the same time. Bakugo got to the point. So who won? You must have taken notes. Izuku dug a notebook out of his backpack. Here are the finalists, the 8 we will face. I included their names and an explanation of their powers. He laid the notebook on the table. Each student took it in turn to read the line pages. The page had the names of the finalists and a brief description of their powers. It also had a sketch of each student. Kirishima mused a moment before speaking. So, these are our opponents. I wonder why they held their tournament in advance of our sports festival. Bakugo spoke in his normally gruff tone. Probably because the final tournament is being held here at UA. It probably takes time to get permission to let such powerful individuals leave one country and go to another. Melissa nodded. You're right on that. It took a few weeks for me to get authorized to come to Japan to attend UA. If these guys are that powerful, who knows what strings have to be pulled? The ice teen had one question, though. Aizu were the other 3 names. Everyone looked at the book again. They all realized that there were only 5 names in the notebook. The blue teen gave a shrug. The last 3 were not shown. I guess they were individuals chosen to proceed, like you and me, Shoka. You're probably right. That means we have no idea what they can do. The group grew silent as they contemplated this new information. All of them realized that this was going to be even more challenging than they first thought. Eri was the one to break the tension-filled silence. Looks like you guys have your work cut out for you. Shoka nodded at that. She then turned to her demure classmate with a curious look. I still can't believe you aren't taking part in the sports festival, Eri. Bakugo had a blank expression. Really remote? Eri got a sour face. I told you not to call me that. But yes, Mr. Aizawa and the principal don't think it would be a good idea for me to take part with my powers acting up. Melissa gave Eri a kind and supportive look as she spoke. How you feel about it, Eri? I do feel bad about not being able to participate in the sports festival with everyone. But Dad is right. My power is too dangerous to use if I can't control it. But that only means I will have to work harder to gain control of it. I did it once, I can do it again. Izuku felt a little guilty about this. If it had not been for his own power acting weird, then Eri would not have lost control of her power. However, he was also encouraged at the same time. Even if she had a roadblock, she was not giving up on her dream of being a hero. Bakugo grunted at that, probably for the best remote. You wouldn't stand a chance in a fight against me anyway. Eri got a grumpy look at that. She decided not to fight it. It wasn't worth it, and Bakugo was, well, Bakugo. Just then a loud voice broke the group out of their discussion. Hey, it's Todoroki. No one recognized the voice that had just spoken. Everyone turned toward the source. Standing behind the group was a tall boy with olive-toned skin and dark brown hair cut in a severe buzz cut. He almost looked bald. He was grinning from ear to ear. Shoka recognized the boy. Urashi. Todoroki, so nice to see you again. Calm down, Urashi, we're just talking. Right, sorry. The energetic boy lowered his voice a few decibels, but not his energy. I came over to ask how you're doing. I heard about the trouble you all had at the USJ. I just want to make sure you were okay. We're fine. No lasting damage. Thanks for your concern, though. Izuku got a concerned look on his face. Part of him didn't like Shoka being so friendly with another guy. Then he remembered hearing the name Urashi somewhere before. He thought for a moment. Then his memory was jogged. Shoka had mentioned his name after she had taken the recommendations test to get into UA. Izuku turned toward his girlfriend, seated to his right. Shoka, care to introduce us? It occurred to the girl that she hadn't done so. Guys, this is Inasa Urashi. I met him at the recommendations test. He got into Class B as one of the recommended students. Urashi in a dramatic way. That's right. The tall teen then turned to face Izuku. So, Todoroki, is this the guy you brought up after the test? He is. This is my boyfriend, Izuku Midoriya. The dynamic teen stood over Izuku, staring down at him with a serious look. Izuku wondered why he changed all of a sudden. He wondered what was going on. You have a lot of passion in your eyes. I do. Yes. His face got more serious and got closer to him. Izuku was getting weirded out. He was so close to him. Finally, Urashi smiled again. I love that. I think all heroes should have passion and grit in their eyes. With that, the smiling teen bid everyone an energetic goodbye and wished them the best in the sports festival. Izuku watched the boy as he left. Wow, he is a little much. Shoka added coldly. I was going to say high-strung. But that too. I thought so at first. But he's all right. Shoka then took Izuku's hand under the table. Her cold aura sent a sudden chill up his arm. She then leaned into his ear and spoke softly. No need to be worried. Aizu, you're the only guy for me. This made the blue teen smile. He hadn't been worried about that, though, not seriously. He trusted Shoka. Still, it was nice to hear. Meanwhile, at the op training grounds, a dangerous development was going on. Alan Walker and Kulex both sat in the control room, looking at a screen of an artificial cityscape. It was a training facility not unlike UA's ground beta. Several large robots were attacking a large creature. The beast was so large and powerful, it was able to leap from building to building with ease. It also moved so fast it could not be seen clearly. The creature easily decapitated several of the bots. It then took to ripping the rest in half. Kulex clapped and smiled. Well done, Alan. Looks like the boy has gotten control now. Alan groaned. Almost. He still has a ways to go before he can truly master this power. Though I am impressed he improved it to this extent so quickly. He comes from good stock, that one. Good genes do not always equal good outcomes, sir. How about your other students? They are ready, sir. How about Class 2? Quartz tells me they are ready and eager for the challenge. Walker was very pleased with everything so far. It had been a risk to have their school tournament so early, but it was the only way. All the permissions they had to get for 10 powerful quirk users to go from one country to another is ridiculous. Kulex had a special international hero license that allowed him to go many places around the world. The world governments, friendly or not, did not give that permission to just anyone. It showed just how well connected and capable the headmaster still was. At least the early selection gave him, and his counterpart in Class 2, time to prepare their students a little more. Plus, the school tournament had been over rather quickly. The selected students had finished the fights without exposing too much of their powers. The UA students would see what they were, but wouldn't understand them completely. And then there were the automatic finalists. The opposition would not even know what they were packing. All looked good, and so a few more days passed. The students of one found themselves at the sports festival. It was a rip-roaring day of activities. There was an obstacle course, a cavalry battle, and a foam sword fighting match. A few important events happened during the proceedings. Hitoshi Shinso managed to stand out and catch the eye of both Aizawa and the principal. The 1A students were introduced to Meihachium and weirded out by her at the same time. Ida still got humiliated by the pink-haired girl in the finals. Bakugo and Urashi were dominant forces in the events. The ultra-happy win user got on Bakugo's last nerve. After his loss, Ida got a call about his brother. He informed Izuku and Shoka that the man had been fatally injured by a villain. He left before the finalists were announced to be with his family. The events whittled the competitors down to 6. The finalists would go on to the OP tournament along with Izuku, and Shoka would be Bakugo, Uraraka, Tokoyami, Urashi, and Kirishima. That night, Shoka was invited to spend the night at the Midoriya house. It was closer to the school than the Todoroki mansion. Inko had also wanted to celebrate the two getting into the finals. Both felt it was a little early to celebrate. After all, they hadn't done anything yet. But neither teen could say no to Inko. She was just too sweet. It was like saying no to a puppy or a kitten. After a terrific dinner, Izuku and Shoka settled down on the sofa. Izuku was wearing a gray t-shirt and loose-fitting pants. Shoka was also dressed down in a light blue tank top and gray sweatpants. The girl turned to face Izuku. "So, what did you want to show me, Aizu?" The blue teen was fiddling with the TV remote. He finally pulled up Matube, the internet video site. "I told the others about this channel. It was the one that streamed the OP Academy tournament. I figured we could watch it together and go over our opponents' fights." Shoka puffed her checks out in annoyance. "Are you saying you have a beautiful girl alone in your house, and you want to watch a fighting tournament?" Izuku looked over at the girl with a flat expression. "First, we are not alone. My mom is in the next room. Second, you made it very clear on how you expected me to act when we were alone together. What you're suggesting would violate that. If I recall correctly, you said the punishment would be having certain parts of my autonomy frozen. I have no interest in that." Shoka stared at her boyfriend with her cool azure eyes for a long moment. Her face showed no sign of emotion. Izuku got worried for a moment. Then he felt a rush of relief as his girl smiled at him. "I don't say it nearly enough, but you're a really good boyfriend. Aizu." The boy smiled back. "You could stand to mention it more." Shoka playfully slapped Izuku's shoulder. She then leaned over and kissed him on the lips. The two only held contact for a few minutes. Shoka slid over on the sofa next to Izuku and placed her head on his shoulder. Both teens got comfortable, and Izuku started the video. In the other room, Inko held back tears. She was overcome with pride in her son. He was such a gentleman. She had raised him right. In the back of her mind, she wondered how long it would be before they gave her some grandchildren. Probably not until they are 22 or 25. Not too long, she thought. The next day, about mid-morning, the finalists all gathered in the locker room of the UA stadium. All of them sat nervously. All had been waiting for this moment. All 8 were dressed in their gym uniforms. It was decided that this tournament would include the same rules as the sports festival. The students wouldn't wear any hero costume or support items without permission. That way they could keep it competitive and fair. Finally, the call came for them to make their way to the field entrance. They all head down the hallway. No one spoke a word. The tension was getting to them all. More than that, though, was their curiosity. They had each watched the coming opponents on television, but how would they act and sound? None of them knew. This unknown information made them all even more scared. As the 8 entered the arena, President Mike introduced the group individually with his usual dynamics. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You have all been waiting for it, and it's here. The UA versus OP tournament will now begin. Entering the ring now, we have our 8 UA finalists for the first years. The group then entered one at a time as their names were called. Up first, we have the explosive prodigy, Katsuki Bakugo. He may be only a high schooler, but he is downright manly, Ijiro Kirishima. She's small, cute, and lifts you up, Ochako Uraraka. He's the only representative from Class 1B and is a breath of fresh air. Give it up for Inesi Urashi. She's a blonde with a strong right hook, Melissa Shield. His power and personality are as black as night, Fumikicho Koyami. As you folks know, the last 2 slots were filled by 2 very powerful students. You haven't seen them perform yet, but they will not disappoint. Up first, she is cool to the touch and will collect all the W's, Shoka Todoroki. And last, but certainly not least, he is about to set this competition on fire, Izuku Midoriya. The crowd gave each a cheer in turn. The group stood on the right-hand side of the cement fighting ring. A few people murmured about how Shoka was Endeavor's daughter. Quite a few wondered about Izuku. They didn't think he looked very special. Mike continued. Now for the opposition. With those words, a giant gateway appeared on the left-hand side of the ring, as if on cue. It looked like a pair of large green double doors. The doors slide open to reveal a swirling golden portal. 11 shadowy figures walked out the portal, and the doors closed behind them. All fell silent in the stadium as the UA students stared down their new opponents. The 16 teens stared each other down. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. The audience were all on the edge of their seats. They wondered if hands were going to be thrown. No one dared to blink and miss what happened next. The UA students all glared nervously at the op students. What was going to happen now, all of them thought. Everyone noticed that the op students were dressed in orange and white gym uniforms. Those must have been their school colors, like UA's were red, white, and blue. Izuku noticed that none of the group were wearing support items. That must mean they didn't need them. If what he saw in the tournament was true, he could see why. Finally, a short girl with bright purple hair and eyes smiled at them and spoke in a very perky voice. Hello, everyone. It is so nice to meet you. All the UA students were stunned at this. They expected this group to be monstrous and hardcore. This girl seemed nice. She had an aura of politeness and kindness radiating off her. Just then a boy with dark brown skin popped up next to the girl. Bianca, this is a competition. We're supposed to be intimidating. You just ruined it. The girl got a look of absolute shame on her face. So sorry, Ed. She turned to her teammates with her hands in front of her in a placating gesture. Sorry, everyone. A tall boy with blonde hair and gray skin stepped forward. It's all right, Bianca. We know intimidation isn't your strong suit. Just let your actions do the talking. The girl smiled at the tall boy. The joyful gleam returned to her eyes. Thanks, Jim. You're so sweet. Ed just shook his head. You are not helping her that way, Chico. The boy just shook his head in disbelief. Well, that plan is blown. However, Izuku looked over at this kid. He was shorter than he was. His eyes were almost candy apple red in color. Despite his lack of height, the boy had a lean and athletic build. Was he Mexican? He believes they call him Latino in America. Ed looked at Shoka, Uraraka, and Melissa. A strange land, but such nice-looking ladies, he thought. The tall one is a little frigid for my taste. His eyes shifted Melissa. She must be an exchange student. She looks like a Cali girl. Then his eyes met Uraraka. That hair, those eyes, and everything else. He went to move toward the brunette. Chica, will you? Before he could finish the sentence, he was struck in the back of the head by a taller Caucasian girl. She had long blonde hair tied back in a ponytail. Her eyes were stormy gray. Her face was impassive. She showed no emotion even as she struck her fellow student. That is your one and only warning, Ed. Ed rubbed the back of his now swollen head. Why do you always have to be so mean to me, Anna? Because you insist on acting like a lovesick idiot. We are guests in this country. Your propositions aren't that funny or appreciated back home. I doubt they would be more so here. Izuku leaned slightly to his right. Shoka was standing there. I was worried they would be mean, but I think this has me more concerned. The tall, white-haired girl nodded and spoke in a quiet tone. The blonde takes no lip off anyone. She must be the big sister of the group. Did you notice the earpieces? Shoka nodded at this. The devices were pieces of plastic molded to the students' ears. Melissa overheard the two and jumped in. Those are Mark 72 instant translators. They can translate spoken words from one language to another. If not for those, you all wouldn't be able to understand them. Japanese is not a language commonly taught in the States. The pair nodded in agreement. It made sense the staff of OP would supply such devices. They didn't want the language barrier to get in the way of the event. Mike went on to introduce the new group. The ops students all stood up straighter at this. Izuku wondered if this was part of their training. He had heard that many heroes in the U.S. worked alongside their armed forces. Maybe they had some military drilling. First up, we have a real Snow general, Bianca Snow. The purple-haired girl stepped forward. She had a cheerful smile on her face. She was of slender build. However, it was clear she was no pushover despite her friendly and outgoing personality. Next to her, we have a brutal powerhouse, Jim Thomes. The tall boy with blonde hair and gray skin stepped forward. He pumped his large fist in the air and smiled at the crowd. His gray skin had a shine to it, almost like metal. His eyes were a dark blue. His body was powerful and well-trained. Even his small movements seemed swift and precise. His bold, dynamic, and explosive, Ed Garcia. The short Latino boy stepped up and waved the audience. His smile was huge and infectious. His red eyes seemed to crackle with energy. His movements made it seem like he was trying very hard not to explode himself. He's a true alpha male, Kyle Stark. A guy of average height stepped forward. He had medium-length brown hair. His body looked agile, like a parkour runner. His eyes were the sharpest yellow you had ever seen, like a safety vest. He was also wearing an eye patch. For some reason, his face seemed bored and uninterested in being here. Weird. Next, we have a real mastermind, Anna Charles. 1. The expressionless blonde girl Izuku remembered her from the tournament. She had taken out her opponents with basic hand-to-hand techniques. She never used her power to do it. He wondered if this meant she couldn't. More likely her power was not physical in nature. She was one to keep your eye on. His power will wipe you out like a tidal bore, Peter Johnson. 2. This guy was standing next to the gray-eyed girl. He was taller than her by a few inches. He was handsome in a rough way. He had a lean build, like a surfer. His eyes were sea green and had a firm, resolved look in them. He is dark and mysterious. Night. Mike looked over his notes and gave a long with a confused tone. I'm not seeing a last name. The dark teen called up the announcer box with a low bar tone that could be heard clearly throughout the stadium. There's no last name. It's just Night. It's cooler that way. Not really cool if you have to explain it. But okay. The boy had pitch black skin and hair to match. His eyes glowed a bright orange like a harvest moon. His tone of voice and actions remind everyone of their shadow-wielding classmate. If not for this bird head and Knight's obsidian complexion, the two could have been twins. Finally, she's quick-witted and quick-footed, Liberty. The girl had long, dark purple hair and yellow eyes. Her skin was a dark mocha in complexion. She was rounder than the other girls, but had very strong legs. She had a serious smirk on her face. It was like she was saying, "Say something, I dare you." The crowd cheered at this. Many of them didn't know what to think about this group. Then again, they had as little idea about them as the UA students did. They were about to learn firsthand. Aizawa had been sitting next to Present Mike, wondering why he let Mike talk him into doing this again. The grumpy man was now free of his bandages thanks to Recovery Girl. He was interested to see how his students fared. He would be watching carefully to see what changes needed to be made to their training after the tournament. The dark-haired man then spoke into his microphone. The referee for this event will once again be Midnight. The R-rated hero entered the ring with a bold sachet. The UA and Ops students wondered what she was trying to do. Her movements and costume were very inappropriate for a school event. Midnight spoke in a clear and confident voice. We will now find out the order of the matches. The dark-haired woman snapped her whip, and the names of all the students appeared on the Jumbotron screen that hung over the field. She snapped the whip again, and the names started to mix themselves up. After a moment, the tournament barracks appeared on the screen. The match would be as follows. 1. Eijiro Kirishima versus Jim Thomas. 2. Melissa Shield versus Kale Stark. 3. Shoka Todoroki versus Bianca Snow. 4. Inasa Yurashi versus Liberty. 5. Katsuki Bakugo versus Knight. 6. Ochako Uraraka versus Ed Garcia. 7. Fumikichi Tokoyami versus Anna Charles. 8. Izuku Midoriya versus Peter Johnson. Izuku looked over at the tall guy with the sea-green eyes. I will be facing him first. Peter caught sight of Izuku, looking at him. He stared back at him with a determined and fierce look. At that moment, Izuku felt a giant pressure on his shoulder, like he was sitting on the bottom of the sea. Midnight spoke again. We will take a short break while the ring is finalized for the matches. This will allow our guests a short while to rest from their trip. Those in the first match may go to the locker rooms to prepare. The rest of you can take your seats in the boxes prepared for you. With that pronouncement, the two groups made their way out of the ring. Izuku turned to Shoka on his left and let out a deep breath. That was nerve-wracking. The cool girl nodded. You're right. She was about to say something when Peter Johnson and a short, fat blue man made their way over to the pair. The tall, dark-haired boy looked at Izuku with the same determined look. You're Izuku Midoriya. The boy said it like it was a fact. There was no hint of questioning in his voice. I hear your hot stuff. Some have said that. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing it for myself. The boy raised his hand toward the boy. He smiled as he did so. Good luck. Izuku looked at the hand, confused about what he was doing. Shoka had been watching the event play out. Hearing Kulex's name drew her in even more. This was the man who had asked for her and Izuku to be placed in the finals. She remained cool and collected, but she needed to pay attention here. It's fine, you just arrived in the country. No harm done, though I fear Anna might have more to say about it. Kulex then stepped up to Izuku. His eyes were covered in a pair of white sunglasses, but they did nothing to hide the man's curiosity. So you're the new son, impressive. Those two words hit Izuku like a wrecking ball. The vision of his father came flooding back to him at that moment. He had not thought about it in years. Kulex cracked a smile. So you've heard that before. The shock of hearing those words was probably all over his face. No one could have emotions from such a powerful memory. How do you know that name? The Izuku tone was a strange mixture of curiosity, fear, and demand. The blue man gave a cheery grin. That's a long story, but I need to see my students first. You two can meet me in the locker room on the far side of the stadium after the first rounds. I will explain everything there. The round-gutted man turned toward Peter. Let's go check on the others, my boy. The green-eyed boy nodded, and the two turned and left the ring. Izuku stood there, his mouth agape. His eyes had a glazed-over look to them. Shoka had seen her boyfriend in many states, but nothing like this. She wondered why he was so shaken. Was it fear? No, she thought, that is not what this is. Then a memory tapped at the back of her mind. She remembered a conversation she and Izuku had when they were small, long before they started dating. She remembered him telling her about the vision, as he called it, he had of his dad when he got his power. She had overheard him telling her dad one day, and she asked him later what it was about. He had been nervous to tell her, but he had in the end. By the end of the story, he was in tears. Shoka just hugged him and told him it was all right. She also said she believed him. He was happy to hear that. Apparently, some people thought it was his imagination. Izuku was a very creative guy, but that story was too awe-inspiring even for his mind. Shoka turned to her guy. She gently placed her hand on his shoulder. Izuku is what he said. The boy turned and looked up at the white-haired girl. She took him by the hand and led him out of the arena. In his current state of mind, she feared he would stay there all day otherwise. Shoka led Izuku into the tunnels under the stadium. After a few minutes, Izuku got his emotional bearings. The white-haired girl was glad. Still, though, his dark blue eyes were full of concern. It was clear to the girl that Izuku's mind was running through every possibility. Shoka understood all too well. His father's death had been one of the foundational events in Izuku's life. So much of the person he was today was created from that event. However, it was also still the biggest unanswered question in his life. How he died, who killed him, and the circumstances surrounding it were still unknown. Izuku had tried to get information, but the Hero Commission would never divulge the details. They would only give some ruling with a long name that forbade them from telling how one of the greatest heroes on the planet died. It never made sense to the girl. She hated it for her love. Now they have met someone that might have some answers. She couldn't imagine how overwhelming that was. Maybe, just maybe, he could get some answer about that dark chapter of his life. Still, Shoka worried that this information might bring back the darkness that had hung over Izuku for so many years. She still remembered how he would cry on his birthday when he was young. He had gotten over that little by little. She didn't want to see him suffer like that again. As the couple made their way down the tunnel, back to the stadium seats, they ran into Bakugo and Kirishima. The blonde bomb was berating the redhead for something. Get your head in the game, moron. The undressing stopped when the pair got close. Bakugo noticed his friend and rival's face. His face went from angry to perplexed. Firefly, what's wrong? Izuku took a deep breath and explained what had just happened with Headmaster Kulex. Bakugo listened intently. His face still looked angry, but a more inquisitive angry. After a moment, Izuku finished, and the bomb boy got to speak. So he knows about the new Sunum. It's not impossible. Your dad did work in the States a lot. Izuku nodded. If my memory serves, Kulex was still active as a pro hero at the time. You would know better than me. If it's all right, I would like to be there when you talk to the blue bastard. Izuku smiled at that. Thanks for the emotional support, Kaken. But I think I will be fine. Bakugo's angry face came back. It has nothing to do with emotional support, nerd. I want to make sure that sunglass-wearing goofball isn't trying to pull a fast one. Shoka exhaled in frustration. She expected that kind of reaction, but it still always caught her by surprise. Still, it was good to know he cared for Izuku as much as she did. Kirishima had been listening to this whole exchange and got very confused. Sorry to interrupt, but what are you all talking about? It hit the three that they had not told the other 1A members about Izuku's vision when he got his powers. No wonder he looked so apocalyptically confused. Izuku was about to say something when Bakugo interrupted. Don't tell him. Kirishima got a look that was somewhere between hurt and confused. Tell me what? That's mean, Kaken. We can't just leave him in a state of confusion. Don't. He will get all teary-eyed and start professing manliness. I promise I won't. Please, guys. He looked so desperate to be included. Kaken, if we don't tell him, his curiosity might distract him in his match. You'll also like Embers of Peace BNHA/MHA fanfiction by Abyss Rights. Embers of Peace BNHA/MHA fanfiction. 67.2K. 1.3K. End quote. All men are not created equal, end quote. He knew that from an early age of 4. Our protagonist, Izuku Midoriya, manifested a very powerful quirk, a combination of his, trust me, Katsuki Bakugo X Reader, discontinued by WMP. Trust me, Katsuki Bakugo X Reader, Discani, 89.8K, 2.1K. As we all know, Katsuki Bakugo is known to have a hot temper, is cocky, and likes to destroy things. Y/N, a kind, quiet, and cheerful girl. They both met when they were No Choice Villain. Deku by Magdalene Baxter. No Choice Villain. Deku, 43.3K, 2.6K. Izuku Midoriya just wanted to be a hero. Unfortunately for him, life was about to get much more complicated. To protect the people he loved the most, Izuku would have to mind versus might. Without power we rise. BNHA Dark Fanfic by Hexx. Mind versus might. Without power we rise. BNHA 13K, 434. In a world where power defines worth, Izuku Midoriya was destined to be nothing, quirkless, weak, forgotten. But fate is not so kind, and the world's cruelty only sharp. The Iron Heart by the Mothman's Ranger. The Iron Heart, 103. 2. 4-year-old Rika Midoriya loves heroes. She tries to learn all she can about them because they're the coolest, and she's going to be one when she grows up. That is by underscore ghost 5699 underscore dot 77.9K, 2.4K. And quote, optimistic fools die early, but I like your confidence, so I'll let it slide. End quote. A broken girl within. Shoka nodded at that. His right Bakugo, we wouldn't want UA to get a black eye because you didn't feel like sharing. Bakugo crosses arms in annoyance. Humps. Don't say I didn't warn you. Izuku told Kirishima about his vision. The Red had listened intently to the whole story. When it was over, he stared at Izuku blank-faced for several minutes. The teen's red eyes started to water. Tears formed rivers down the side of his face. That is the manliest story I have ever heard. Bakugo got an annoyed look on his face. He had told him this would happen. Kirishima dried his eyes before speaking. Hey, Midoriya bro, have you ever thought of using New Sun as your hero name? Shoka and Bakugo smiled at that. Kirishima saw the reaction and got confused again. What? Shoka spoke up in a soothing voice. After me and Bakugo heard that story, we both told Aizu the same thing. Shoka moved up to stand next to her boyfriend. It kind of fits so well. He is warm and inviting. He fills everyone around him with joy and happiness. Bakugo cut in then. He can also incinerate his enemies to ash. Izuku wondered if they were right. Well, that would have to wait until another time. Be that as it may, the blue team placed his hand firmly on Kirishima's shoulder. Kirishima, go give your match everything you have. Show the crowd and everyone watching how hard you've worked. The rocky teen pumped his fist into the air. You know I will. With that, Izuku, Shoka, and Bakugo all went to Stadium Box to watch the event with the rest of the class, and Kirishima went to the locker room to prepare. As they walked, Shoka spoke in a firm voice. Bakugo's advice to Kirishima also applies to you, Aizu. The fire teen turned toward his girl with a questioning look on his face. What do you mean? You need to get your head in the game. Don't get so caught up in wanting to learn about your dad that you don't take this challenge seriously. Bakugo nodded. The Ice Queen is right. Firefly. The moron is not the only one with his hands full. That Peter Johnson guy has a dangerous aura about him. I get the feeling that a performance in OP school tournament was just the tip of the iceberg. I get the feeling this guy is probably just as strong as you, maybe a little stronger. Shoka didn't like that. He called her Ice Queen. At this point, she decided to let it go. She needed to focus too. That snow girl was going to be just as much work. She may be cheery, but she also had that same air as the rest. All of them were dangerous. The trio arrived at the box in short order. The whole class was seated in various groups. Momo and Jairu were off to one side. Shoji, Cody, Tokoyami, and Weejoy were together. Mina and Hagekyu were chatting away about something. Ciro, Kaminari, and Mineta were speaking in hushed tones and probably up to no good. Aoyama was sitting by himself. Down toward the front of the box, Melissa, Uraraka, and Azuri were looking at the field. Uraraka turned to look as Izuku and Shoka entered the box. Hey, you two, come sit here. Izuku and Shoka both smiled at this. They made their way down to the seats and prepared for the upcoming matches. Bakugo took up a seat behind Izuku. Eri was nowhere to be seen. The three figured she would still be helping Recovery Girl with the injured, like she had during the sports festival. She still hadn't been cleared to use her powers yet, but she was taking the opportunity to observe Recovery Girl in action. A short while later, the ring had been prepared and all safety checks had been performed. Midnight stood in the middle of the ring. It's time for matches to begin. The R-rated hero snapped her whip and an energy field appeared in front of the crowd. It was made of interlocking triangles. Once it was formed, the field became transparent. What you have just seen, ladies and gentlemen, is the new Mach 14 What Tutelage Field. It will make sure you are protected from all the powerful quirks you'll see here today. Mike jumped in on the loudspeaker. That's right, my awesome audience, we have you covered. So sit back and enjoy the show. A large man with a square head and gray rocky skin came into the arena. He formed a chair out of cement next to the ring and then took a seat. I'm Cementos. I'll break things up if it gets too rough. Mike took a deep breath and projected his words with all his might. Let's get this party started. The crowd screamed at this. They all wanted to see some action. Mike introduced the first combatants. Jim Thomes and Kirishima stood in the ring opposite each other. Fire shot into the air from the corners of the ring. Kirishima cracked his knuckles in anticipation. Jim smiled at the spiky redhead. Name, Jim Thomes. Quirk, Crossguard. This power gives the user the ability to create 8 powers of their choosing. Jim must wait for the circle mark on his hand to become active before he creates the power. Once the power is made, it can't be changed. At the moment, Jim has 3. Note from Kulex. This quirk's existence is top secret, so don't tell anyone got it. After the crowd quieted down, the two boys approached each other in the center of the ring. Midnight spoke in a serious tone. All right, here are the rules. The match will end when a fighter can't move, is knocked out of the ring, or is too injured to continue. Cementos and I will be watching carefully. We both are capable of ending the match if we think one or both fighters are in danger. With that in mind, go to your corners and get ready. As Kirishima turned to take his spot, Jim spoke in his rather deep, manly voice. Good luck, man, and don't hold back. The redhead gave his opponent a thumbs up. I didn't plan on it. The two boys squared up. Each took a fighting stance. They readied themselves for anything. As Kirishima raised his hands in front of his face, he noticed Jim doing the same. The sharp-toothed teen noticed the marks on his hands. They were each in the shape of a cross. 4 circles formed the points, and they were connected by 2 lines. On Jim's right hand, 3 of the circles were white in color. Kirishima thought this was weird. He wondered if they were tattoos. Weird, he thought. Begin! Midnight shouted with lusty zeal. Kirishima prepared to defend. However, Jim was in front of him 1 minute and gone the next. In an instant, Jim reappeared in front of Kirishima with his right hand raised high. The gray-skinned youth delivered a powerful punch to his opponent's face. The blow created a powerful crack that was heard all through the stadium. He then followed up with a powerful blow to Kirishima's gut. The rocky teen went flying through the air. He would have gone out of the ring, but he got his wits back, hardened his hand, and grabbed a fistful of ring to stop himself. Kirishima righted himself and took a few deep breaths to calm himself. The boy wondered if his opponent had super strength. Maybe he also had super speed. Jim was rubbing his fist. That hurt. The gray teen looked carefully at his opponent. He noticed his rocky hand, but more importantly, he saw his face. It too had a rocky appearance now. I see. You managed to harden your face before my fist made contact. If you hadn't done that, you would have been knocked out. Very impressive. Kirishima got a wild look in his eyes. He shouted out his next thought without thinking. What was that? Do you have super strength? Jim cracked a cocky smile. I'm very strong, but no, that is not my power. I was just testing you. You passed. What? However, from your stance and your method of defense, I can tell you were employing a slugger-style strategy. Weren't you? The redhead was still confused, but he actually knew what he was talking about. Slugger is a style of boxing, isn't it? Correct. Your quirk is defensive in nature. You were planning on eating my damage until I got worn down. Kirishima went from confused to shocked. He could tell all of that. This guy was good, not a bad plan. However, You will lose this fight if you stick to that plan. Jim held out his right hand before him. Suddenly, a large mace appeared in his hands. It was a simple design. The head was a spear, and the shaft was a medium length. The shiny metal was engraved with strange symbols all over.
In 200
the head
yards,
and the shaft seemed to be made out of one piece of metal. No seams at all. It looked to weigh about 20 pounds. Jim held it like it was light as air. Heads up, Jim charged him. He swung the large weapon at his opponent. Kirishima hardened his body just before the blow hit. The blow stopped dead. Jim smiled and unleashed a rapid-fire series of smashes with his mace. The blows rang out across the field like a cannon fire. Each blow was accompanied by a pained expression on the Rock team's face. Kirishima took each blow like a man. However, they were more powerful than he thought they would be. He could almost feel the impacts inside him. He knew Thomas had been right. If he just took his blows, he was going to lose. Jim stopped his assault with a swing and left back. Come on, attack already. Easy for you to say. You're so fast. Jim nodded. Understanding. I think your problem might be mental. Kirishima looked confused. What? My head's in the game. Completely. Jim brought his right hand up to his chin and stroked it thoughtfully. You think so? Where's my mace? Kirishima noticed
at the roundabout.
that Jim's
Take the
hand
second
was empty.
exit.
He wondered if he had lost his mind. Then a shadow appeared over it. It was getting bigger by the second. The red team looked up and saw a giant metal spear falling toward him, his face bug out of his head. The object was gigantic, at least 20 feet across. The spear was now falling toward Kirishima at terminal velocity. The orb impacted the ring where Kirishima was standing. It looked like the team was finished. Back up and stand. The whole class 1A was in shock. Naruto was the first to voice it. What the heck? Where did that giant weapon go? Shoka thought for a moment before answering. I believe that borrows Mace Thomas' used it. Melissa nodded. You're right. It seems his power lets him manifest that mace. He can then control its size and shape it. Naruto was still confused. But that thing doesn't look anything like a weapon he was using. Shoka's face was impassive, but her eyes were scanning the scene carefully. Look at the spear.
In 400 yards, you will arrive at your destination.
To me, it looks like he threw the mace up when Kirishima wasn't looking. He then waited for it to reach a high velocity, and then increased the size of the mace's head to its current size. Melissa nodded. A dangerous attack. It could have caught them both. He must be able to control the mace remotely. Izuku stayed silent the whole time. He and Shoka had seen the ops students in their school tournament. However, that did them no justice. Jim's attacks were powerful, but also precise. The blue team got the feeling that this was only the very basic skills he had. It seems Jim Thomas is trying to help Kirishima. Izuku's voice was firm and adamant. Shoka nodded. You're probably, so why I don't know. Back in the ring, Jim stood by looking at the massive mace. It looked as if it was crushing the opponent. He didn't look worried. Midnight was about to come down, and the mace like a demon, standing there, the skin solid enough to sun. Kirishima, he had a few cracks in his skin, but was otherwise unharmed. The team let out a shout. OWWW. What the heck, man? That could have killed me just then. Jim smiled. You were never going to be. There's no way you can lose. Jim looked at his opponent with a stern face. He was stronger than me. Kirishima got with his absence. My power is just so ordered. I can only be shield. Gray guide. Your power is more useful. With your strength, you can be a real steamroller of the hero. What do you mean? My power just makes my skin harder than yours. Did you notice the way of my face? The look of understanding across the team's face. Now that you mention it, that thing felt like a freight train on his shoulder. It probably weighed on me. Jim raised his hand and pulled him. The weapon shrank back to its normal size and flew into Gray Team's hand. You see this weapon can change size, but its weight remains the same. Training with it is what made me so strong and powerful. The fact that you survived it all around with a velocity with barely a scratch is impressive. Furthermore, you look at him. Kirishima realized what Jin was doing. Why are you hesitating? We're both heroes here. We may be from different countries and cultures, but we both strive to get stronger. I think it's our job to help each other in any way we can. Also, I want to really good. I think we can do it. Kirishima got a huge smile on his face. You are just a man. Thanks. Now let's be serious. Come at me with everything you have. Both boys were fighting. They would now go.